Welcome to Marketing Brew Weekly, where we dissect the trends and strategies that are surprising and delighting the marketing industry. I'm Jennimai, reporter at Marketing Brew.
I'm Kelsey Sutton, editor.
And I'm Katie Hicks, senior reporter.
This weekend, I was at South by Southwest, and I saw a lot of things, I heard a lot of things, and now I'm going to tell Kelsey and Katie all about it. And you get to listen and join in.
So, Jennimai, we have been dying to know about what you heard, saw, talked about while you were at South by. So what do you think are some of the highlights from the few days you were there?
It was fun, guys. I had a good time. The weather was perfect. I know these are the things you really care about.
Yes.
The weather was really nice. It was really hot on the last day, but then I got out of there, so that was great. But if I had to give like one theme to like everything that was going on, I would say like everything is just coming together. And I think that's best demonstrated by the fact that I heard, this was my first time ever at South by, been to Austin one other time. It was for a wedding, very different. But first time at South by, so I was just kind of like absorbing everything, but I definitely like heard in several conversations and like literally overheard in the airport at the very end, people talking about the impact of this year, all of the different tracks. So it's like film and TV, innovation, music, all of those tracks happened at the same time, which made the festival itself shorter, which I feel like just like demonstrates this idea of like everything is coming together, like even the festival itself, which was so interesting. Like for me as a first timer, like I didn't necessarily like feel that impact right away, but I think for people who have been going for many years or like have been at all in the past, they were like, ooh, everything is happening at the same time, which can be
everything
good.
Everywhere all at once, one might say.
Quite literally, which did premiere at South by when it originally came out. Wow, beautiful. But I just think it's interesting that like the festival itself like literally had it all happening all at once.
Yeah, I love kind of digging into this idea of convergence. But first, I have a question for you both, which is how important is clear reporting to you?
Oh my God, so important. You guys know that I love a good chart.
She really does. Disney Campaign Manager helps you get clear reporting and always-on dashboards for your campaigns. It's like a live control room where buyers see what ran, what worked, and what to do next without black box guessing.
It helps you launch and manage streaming TV campaigns across Disney+, Hulu, and ESPN, all in one place without juggling complicated workflows.
You can even make adjustments on the fly and optimize while your campaign is live, not after it's over.
Get started today at DisneyCampaignManager.com. That's DisneyCampaignManager.com. All right, let's dive into this idea of everything is everything. So tell us about how everything kind of converged this year.
I mean, I feel like I mentioned the tracks all running concurrently. I feel like the big themes that I was focusing on were kind of in these buckets of like creators and how they were showing up there and the entertainment industry. And those two industries are obviously really coming together. We'll get deeper into that in a second. AI and just like the impact of AI obviously is everywhere at every industry conference and also in our podcasts and in our reporting. And we talk about it all the time, but even just like the impact of how AI is bringing things closer together. And then just this like idea of like brand authenticity. And I feel like everyone's idea of authentic is like kind of coming from the same place, which is interesting because like, is that authentic if everyone has the same idea? But yeah, I feel like those are like the big things that I think about. But what like really I think about all the time and I report on all the time is obviously the entertainment world and the social media world. And I think that is where I want to start because I think I had a lot of interesting conversations there, kind of best represented by this one panel that I went to with Julian Shapiro Barnum, who is the host of Recess Therapy on TikTok, creator. He also hosts Celebrity Substitute, and Jeremy Lowe, who is at Dick Clark Productions, who does like the Golden Globes and Rock and Eve and these like award shows and like entertainment juggernaut legacy shows, and a brand rep from Doing Things, which she works on like the brand side of things. And they talked a lot about just like the growing trend of bringing creators into these like legacy spaces and entertainment legacy prestigious spaces. Julian was the second creator that they ever brought onto the Golden Globes carpet, and we just had the Oscars this weekend.
Oh, yes. We have some thoughts on that.
We have many thoughts, but it's a thing that like I think that Dick Clark Productions and the Golden Globes can kind of claim as like they were early onto that because they had Amelia de Moldenberg the first year, and like she had this viral moment with Andrew Garfield, and it's since then kind of snowballed to like I almost expect to see creators on red carpet.
I feel like Emma Chamberlain at like the Met Gala was also a big like instigator for this trend.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah,
but we're definitely seeing it. We just saw it with the Oscars. There were a few moments that I feel like us as journalists had some thoughts on.
Sure.
Obviously, we support
Don't
journalists.
hold back, Katie. Let's hear it.
Unleash it.
I mean, I will say I like Amelia de Moldenberg. I think we've talked about how she has a background in journalism. She's a great interviewer on the carpet. I think Mary Beth Barone did a really good job at the Golden Globes this year too. She's a comedian. She had some really great questions that were informed by like her knowledge of the actors she was interviewing and the movies she had seen. But then at the Oscars, I think we saw some clips from like Jake Shane, who is a podcaster, asking people what they thought about If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You, and if they thought that the child in the movie was annoying.
I think we have the clip.
We have a clip where he's talking to Julia Fox.
If I had legs, I'd kick you. Wow.
Really good.
Like
really good.
every mother's story, you know, especially.
You think the kid was annoying?
No, I can't.
Yeah, you know that kid was so damn annoying.
I know, but she had issues, and it's like that's the thing.
I think the kid was annoying because of the mom.
No, can I tell you something? It's not that it's the mother's fault or the child's fault. It's society's fault. It sets mothers up to fail.
I think the takeaway here is that Convergence is messy.
It is. Yeah, that's a great takeaway.
Yeah, I think you have to be, I don't know. There are like specifications, I think, to make this work. You can't just throw any creator on the red carpet and be like, it's going to go viral. It's going to be great.
I think that is something that they talked about on the panel a lot, right? And it's like, there is absolutely value. And I think depending on who you're working with, Jeremy from Dick Clark Productions like talked about like they do intensive prep, and they had Amelia and then Julian and then Mary Beth Barone, right? And like I think this year, if you literally look at the comments on Mary Beth's videos, like people are like, oh, like she knows what she's talking about. And I think it does come through when like the person that you are choosing to partner with, who is a creator, knows what they're talking about. And like, yeah, like we as audience members pick up on it. I feel for the creators as well, right? Because I think like the whole point of bringing creators into these spaces is that the brand of the Oscars or the brand of the Golden Globes is trying to modernize and to bring in younger audiences. And what Jake Shane brings to his audience is not journalistic. And he has said that. He said that in a recent interview with Rolling Stone. And he brings entertainment, and they are entertainment properties at the end of the day. It's just interesting that like it used to be a space that was reserved for journalists, and now we're like focusing on the entertainment aspect of it. And there's this pressure to create viral moments, I think, on the carpet because that's what's going to do well on social media. That's why these creators are here. That's why they're being brought in. And I feel for Jake Shane a little bit in that clip because he obviously was trying to make a funny, but
he did it twice though. He asked the guy from F1, I'm forgetting his name. He asked him also. He's like, wasn't she so annoying? Which is
no,
don't double down on that. It didn't land the first time.
It didn't. Yeah. So it's a tough spot to be in, I think, because like you're there to do a job, and I think the job has evolved from what it once was for reporters at publications who might be video reporters for broadcast, but weren't social media video people. And now it's swung so far in the social media direction that we're bringing creators in who are probably not all trained in journalism, and they have their own different approach to it, which has its value, right? Like Jake Shane's audience loves Jake Shane, and they probably were like, yay, he's on the Oscars carpet. Like that is really, really cool. And I see the brand value there. So
yeah, I think there was also a moment in the Oscars lead up. I think it was before one of the awards in January, but it was an influencer talking to Delroy Lindo saying like, what's it like being an emerging artist? And he was like, I've been acting for 40 years. And it was a very awkward moment. So I think there's some brand risk, like as a media institution to bring in creators and just throw them in there and be like, oh, this is going to be a great clip for social, because if they aren't well-versed, if they are not well-researched, and they don't think about this as an interviewing opportunity as opposed to just like a gabbing kind of like, oh my God, what are you wearing tonight? Like, it's so great to see you kind of thing. you can end up with moments that actually hurt your brand that go viral in a negative way.
I feel like this is such an interesting push and pull that we see with brands that are working with creators. There's this message of let them do what they do best, kind of give them the keys, let them cook on their own terms, don't micromanage, don't hover, but you kind of need to go into that clear-eyed, I think, as a brand, as understanding what that looks like. But I think it's so interesting, like the way in which creators have kind of just become a part of so many, like they are just commonplace everywhere. They're commonplace in entertainment, in brands, they're founding brands, they're promoting brands, they're in advertisements. So it's just kind of like the new Hollywood in so many ways. And of course, there's that tension between the old Hollywood and the new Hollywood, but it's kind of, it's like a delta. We've got two different water sources and they're mixing, and that's just what we're seeing is the kind of reality.
I love a geography analogy.
Yeah, I don't know where that came from, but it feels
right.
Yeah,
totally.
I'm curious, like at South by, how much creator content, like how much of the stuff, the activations were geared towards creator content?
Oh my gosh, so much of it. It's interesting, right? Because I was actually just talking before the podcast, like there's like these like houses. There's like Adweek House. Like there's like houses that are often by like media organizations or other big brands. But then there are also so many activations geared towards like the general public and creators. And I think that's shown with like literally how they show up. It's like, so what you're seeing on screen right now, if you're watching, is one of the ones I stopped by was Sam's Club's Creator Academy and Creator Lounge. And it was all about their efforts to like kind of broaden their social media approach. But it was like inviting creators in to like learn about what they have. And they had like cute little like bags and pins and stuff that like are designed for social. But so many of like the, like not a consumer brand, but like a lot of the entertainment brands and entertainment properties, their activations were just photo ops. Like the Paramount Plus Lodge was a series of photo ops in some type of way. Pretty Lethal, which is a Amazon Prime Video movie that is out already or coming out soon about ballerinas and a thriller, which I'm actually very intrigued by. Their whole
Timothy Chalamet has thoughts.
He is very afraid, actually. Yeah. But like the whole booth was just like a fun little like photo op that was essentially like a glam bot, which I think we also have a photo of me for, but we don't have to show it.
I think we need to show that.
It's
No,
fine.
we need
It's
to
fine. Maybe we'll show it later. But like it's cute, it's fun, and it's interactive in a way, and it's geared towards people with their phones, which is not just the creator, it's also the general consumer. But I think the way that these activations show up is also interesting because I think it's geared towards the creator, but it's not necessarily geared towards like the TikTok creator, the video creator. They're photo ops at the end of the day, which is very Instagram to me. And we're not really in the age of Instagram anymore, at least not still photos on Instagram.
I mean, Instagram's not even in the age of still photos anymore.
So true, yeah.
You open the app and they're like, here's a million reels from people you've never met.
So I think that's interesting that like a lot of the ways these brands are showing up at a place like South by, where I think it is full of innovation and full of like a place where you can test things out potentially, is not necessarily future forward or even like really in this current social media moment. It feels a step behind to me.
That's so interesting because I feel like when I think of South by, I think of, and this is probably because I used to write about TV a lot, but I feel like it was always an opportunity for media companies to show off a new show or a big franchise, or sometimes just the brand itself, but in a really extremely interactive way. When Westworld was on HBO, they had huge, I'm sure, just very, budget strenuous, like that. There was a lot of money that went into big activations, like hiring a ton of actors, making it extremely immersive, very experiential. And now we're seeing a lot of brands do that in real life outside of a festival like environment, right?
I think of like the Bridgerton ball or
exactly,
or the
right.
Netflix house.
Yeah. And so we see kind of that DNA showing up, but it's kind of in always on environments, not just for a festival goer, not for the press, not even for creators. But again, I think that that's such an interesting sort of like, this is a sandbox often, and then maybe we see it replicated elsewhere. So I think it's interesting because when I think about those, I think that feels so natural for video, for short form. And again, it's like anyone can be a creator when they go into that space. If they're filming and then they post it, you could have 500 followers, but that's 500 more people who saw this thing than before, right? Or versus inviting somebody who has 13 million followers, right? It's a different effect. But I just think it's such an interesting kind of, there's just so many different factors that kind of go into showing up there.
I talked to someone who works at Deloitte Digital, and he talked about how experiential is a huge part of South by. It's a huge part of most festivals. But I think what you're saying, Kelsey, is interesting because it's like, where experiential is right now is not necessarily, like, it sounds like you're describing something that used to be even more immersive than maybe what I necessarily saw. And I didn't see everything. So there's a potential that like some of this stuff happened. I just didn't happen to see it. But like I saw a Netflix activation. I'm not actually sure what the movie was because it was, I think, like purposely mysterious. But they had a bunch of brides walking around, like people dressed in wedding gowns that were like a little bit bloody. And the backs of their gowns said like, are you sure he's the right one? Like, do you really want to marry him? And they were promoting some new IP that's coming out. And like, it was cool. People were taking videos of it, but I couldn't necessarily interact with it. It was just for me to like witness, which I think like there's something missed there. I think, I don't know. I could have interacted with the brides in some way. Maybe if I had chosen to talk to them, who knows? But I think it's interesting.
It sounds to me like just knowing that like a lot of it was built for photos or like from far away viewing. Like it sounds like it was all geared towards like UGC and just like getting people to like take a picture and share it on like a story or something. But like, it sounds like they used to invest maybe more in like actually getting people involved in the past.
And they do in other spaces, like Kelsey was saying, but not necessarily like at this festival where all of these activations are happening, which is very interesting. But outside of the entertainment world, we have to talk about AI.
Yeah, what were the conversations about AI like?
Yeah. I feel like I was like observing a lot of conversations about AI, and then I had a great conversation at the end of my time at South by with some folks at PwC who are doing a report on like what the big themes of South by are. So they're still working on it. South by is still going on until next week. But we talked a little bit about how AI has shown up so far. And I think my biggest observation is that of all the brands that are there, tech brands, health brands, consumer brands, whatever brand it might be, I think that there was definitely this idea and like demonstration of like, we're all using AI. I swear we're all using AI and we're doing it really well and you're gonna be so excited about it.
Everything's perfect and it's so great.
It's so great and we're rolling out new products with AI and AI is gonna change your life within our brand world. And like there were cool products being announced, I will say, that use AI, but I think just this general attitude of like, we're all using it, I swear, it felt like they were all like proving something to the consumer set, to their boardroom, their shareholders. And I think that's an interesting moment in AI that it seems like we've landed at.
Yeah, I feel like there's such an interesting tension because there was some recent research, I believe it was from NBC News, but 57% of people say that they believe the risks of AI outweigh the benefits. So that to me, I feel like is a little bit of a turning point on like broad consumer sentiment toward AI. And I don't think that the professional conversations are necessarily reflecting that apprehension about it. I think it still is very much, and I feel like we see this at lots of industry conferences. We saw it at CES earlier this year, but focusing on AI as like, here's all the ways in which we're doing it. We are thinking about it and thinking about how to use it and optimize all the time it's just such an interesting kind of tension between what consumers, and I'm wondering how many people, will go and they talk about AI, very maybe positively on stage, and then privately they're like, and I don't really use it because I'm a little worried about it. I think there's just something kind of interesting there.
I mean, there's definitely a tension. Yeah, if your customers don't want it, but you're out there being like, we're so pro AI, we're using it in everything, like there stands to be, again, like a little brand risk there. But yeah, I saw the same study that you cited. And also there was like another study that came out last month from Harvard Business Review showing that AI actually makes your workloads higher in most cases because people are like becoming more efficient and then they have more time and then they're filling that time with more work. So it's like between that and then this idea that like, I think a lot of tech executives have gone out in the last month, it seems in droves, saying like, this is going to replace your job. And like, soon we're going to have a smaller workforce and it's going to be so efficient. And people hear that stuff and they see like the data centers being built in their towns and they're like, this is not good. This feels dystopian. So yeah, I do wonder how this tension is going to continue to manifest, because I think AI has been a huge topic at these festivals for the last few years. Like, I was at Cannes in 2023, and that was the start, I feel, of when everything was just like all over the place. It was like, we're doing AI, and now it's obviously still going on, but at what point do people start having to address that backlash?
Yeah. I wonder too about like the theme of convergence that you sort of teed up at the beginning, Jennimai. I do feel like we're seeing kind of these maybe less sexy AI implementations that I do think is maybe driving people toward this, a more unified or convergent kind of customer experience. I think about AI agents. If you're shopping, you know, it's kind of like everything's here. All of these fragmented things are kind of being pulled together into one space. And I think that's something that AI has, a lot of brands are kind of exploring the way that that shows up. And so I feel like it's interesting that AI kind of is playing a part in that feeling maybe of everything coming together, even as we, you know, I think that we kind of have had this moment of so much fragmentation, and I don't think that fragmentation is going away, but I do think that that's kind of an interesting counterpoint to that.
Yeah, I think that the idea of like agentic AI and like it being not sexy, but still something to pay attention to definitely came up, especially in the shopping and consumer world, because something that the folks at PwC I talked to are focusing on is this idea that the experience of shopping is like poised to be changed by AI. And especially when it comes to younger generations, Gen Z and Gen Alpha, like Gen Alpha is the first generation to grow up like AI native, technically. Like they will have it their entire lives, and they will expect to be able to shop like within the AI platform of their choice. So the folks at PwC were saying that like right now, brands are not actually paying enough attention to that. They are maybe focusing on how they use AI internally and like what products they're rolling out. But if you are a brand that sells something, figuring out how to show up not only in agentic AI search, but also making your actual shopping experience part of those platforms is how you're going to get some of these audiences that expect that to actually buy your products. Because what I relate that to is like when I'm on, wow, this makes me sound so old as I'm thinking about this, but like when I'm on Instagram, like, and I get an Instagram ad, if I can buy that thing like directly without having to leave the Instagram app, even if it like links me out, but like I'm never having to like go to my Safari app or whatever it is, I am more likely to buy it, right? Because it's so much easier.
Yeah,
And
the friction is reduced.
Yeah. And I think so much of the conversation is about like reducing friction and just making things easier and more efficient and more optimized, which relates to like some of the studies that you guys have cited of like it optimizes your time for more time to work, but like
And more time to buy.
and more time to buy. So everyone's just,
But I feel like the kind of goal of some of these AI tools is I have your credit, like the agent has your credit card information, so just buys stuff without even telling you.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I've estimated that you wanted this, so here you go.
So you're
it's-
getting
the
it.
friction is completely evaporated, but I'm
Yeah.
also like, I wouldn't hand my credit card to a random person on the street and say,
I
buy me
mean,
whatever you think I need the most.
But maybe if you trust your ChatGPT guy, your
you
little
go.
guy in your pocket, and that's part of it too, is like this ability to kind of automate like some of the boring purchases. The example that I was talking to PwC people about is like something like paper towels, like that you need on a regular basis, but like you don't need to like actively log in and like buy paper towels on Amazon. And that kind of exists, right? Like you can like schedule like recurring purchases of things like that, but enabling that through AI and like it can help you research the different brands and like kind of take out all of the boring parts of shopping for boring products, but maybe that will expand into less boring products. I don't know. It depends on how the individual consumer uses it. So I think it's so fascinating and poised to just become even bigger than it seems like it is now.
I think it's so interesting because it sounds like, you know, part of the conversation at South by is all of these big tech advancements. We're talking about AI, we're talking about the future, et cetera. But then there's kind of this returning to what works really well.
Yeah.
I feel like we're hearing a lot of conversation, not just at South by, but just industry-wide about really owning experiences, making them feel really engaging for consumers who are trying to find things in real life. They don't want to be hunched over their phones 24/7. You know, they want to experience a cup of coffee with their friends, or they want to, you know, go to the roller rink or do something that feels new and fresh and exciting. And I just think that that's such an interesting sort of balancing act. It is a push and pull, right?
Yeah, it's so fascinating. I think kind of related to that too is like one specific example is NBCU is rolling out their new AI powered product that is all about getting you to engage deeper with like the Bravoverse in particular. They have like a vertical video product. There's an AI avatar of Andy Cohen. Like,
oh my God,
really getting you deep in there. And I think it's interesting. It's a demonstration of what you're saying, Kelsey, that like it is trying to get you to like experience more, right, of the Bravoverse and connect more to these characters that you love, but it is not real at the end of the day. Like it's
people
an AI version of Andy
friendship
Cohen.
with AI Andy Cohen.
Yes. And maybe that's your new bestie, and maybe there is an audience that really, really wants this. But I think sitting at like the beginning of something like that, I can't help but feel apprehensive about it because I'm like, what about real Andy Cohen?
No, I've seen people like say that they've hacked like the Chipotle AI automated like customer service chatbot. They've been like, you know, asking questions of the burrito, and then all of a sudden be like, code this for me, and then the chatbot does. So if I were Andy Cohen, I don't know. Knowing that people can easily hack these things still, I don't know if I'd want my face on whatever output it's generating.
That's so funny. My screen time was 8 hours in the Chipotle app. I was building a website. We never ordered a single burrito.
Just really immersed in the Chipotle universe. But as for Andy Cohen, I'm sure he's very involved with his AI avatar, so I think he'll be okay. But
if not, I bet he has a very tight legal.
That's true. That's so true. But yeah, I feel like I could go on and on. I saw lots of things and heard lots of things, but we're working on some stories too. So perhaps if you want more, you can read more about it. But I'd like to just kind of pick your guys' brains. Where do you guys think South by goes from here? Like, we're converging, we're doing all of this coming together, all of these industries are happening at the same time. What next? What happens for a space like this?
I think about how South by sort of was a music festival and then was, you know, has a film component too, in addition to these tracks. And I wonder how soon it'll be that we're seeing, you know, like all of the films are, you know, and musicians they have a brand component. You know, I feel like that would really illustrate and underscore the amount of convergence that we are seeing. Musicians work with brands all the time. Films are underwritten by brands. We see that involvement, but I really do wonder if that's kind of the future of that festival, is the convergence kind of in every single aspect.
Even more convergence.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, especially as brands are like making their own like TV series and trying to make like their own original content more and more. I see that potentially happening, and I wonder if audiences will continue to like flock to these events, or if they do start to feel too branded.
Yeah.
At what point do you feel like you're just like showing up to like an ad?
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said. South by is such an interesting place because it is both industry conference and film festival and music festival and all these things, and that's what makes it cool, I think. But literally, as I was getting off the plane back in New York, I heard people that were also at South by, overheard them, sorry to eavesdrop on these random strangers, but they were saying like it felt different this year because of all of it happening at the same time. And I imagine they were in the creative field of some sort, because they were pointing out that they were like, in past years it felt more festival-y, whereas this year it felt more conference-y. And like you could tell just by like all the people walking around with like their badges on and like hustling and bustling to like the professional events. And obviously there's a lot of value to that, but it does change the vibe and the feeling. And I think for something that is so steeped in culture, and brands are always like yearning to be steeped in culture and creating culture and part of culture, do we get to a point where like we've converged too much and now everything feels corporatized?
I mean, that is kind of the life cycle of a trend where like something's trendy, brands catch wind of it, they join in, they oversaturate it, and the trend dies. And I think we see this with like social platforms. Like people really like TikTok when it emerged because it was like, in my Instagram feed is so full of ads, and TikTok is just all creators. And like now a few years later, TikTok is also full of ads. And it's like, I've seen people say, you know, what's the next big platform? And I think we can apply that same mentality and that same, you know, life cycle to, you know, festivals that now feel like conferences.
Yeah. Oh, Well, we'll have to keep an eye on it. But thanks so much for joining us today. And if you have thoughts, questions, comments, concerns about South by or anything else, send us an email at mkbw@morningbrew.com, which you can also find in the show notes. And we'll catch you next week.